Welcome back to another UFO series discussion here on Beyond the Known.
Great to be back.
You might remember last time we looked into the Phoenix Lights mystery. Still puzzling over that one.
Absolutely, a classic case.
Today, though, we're jumping to another really significant event, maybe one of the most talked about in recent years. The 2004 Nimitz Tic Tac encounter.
Ah, yes, the Nimitz incident. This one really shook things up, especially when the details and eventually that footage came out.
Exactly, and it's generated a ton of debate. So for this discussion, we really want to approach it from, well, two main angles.
Okay.
We'll look at the arguments suggesting this was some kind of advanced, maybe even non-human technology at play.
The more exotic explanation, yeah.
And then we'll dig into the skeptical side, the more, let's say, conventional or science-based explanations that people have put forward. Radar glitches, illusions, that sort of thing.
Sounds good. It's important to cover both sides fairly. Where should we start? The story itself.
Yeah, let's lay out the basics first. Set the scene. What actually happened back in November 2004?
Okay, so picture this. November 2004, off the coast of Southern California, you've got the USS Nimitz carrier strike group out there. They're doing routine training exercises, standard stuff.
A very busy, controlled airspace environment.
Very. And for several days leading up to the main visual encounter, the USS Princeton, that's a Ticonderoga-class cruiser with really advanced radar, part of the battle group starts picking up some very...
Not just normal aircraft.
Definitely not. These were, well, they were described as multiple anomalous aerial vehicles. The operator saw objects appearing seemingly out of nowhere at around 80,000 feet way up high.
80,000 feet.
And then dropping, like plunging down towards the ocean near sea level in, get this, less than a second.
Wait, less than 1 second. From 80,000 feet? That's, the physics of that alone is staggering.
Exactly. The speeds and accelerations involved are just, well, hard to comprehend based on known technology. Naturally, the first thought was, okay, maybe it's a system glitch. Radar can do weird things sometimes.
Sure, false positives happen. Atmospheric conditions, maybe?
Possibly. So they did the smart thing. They took the system offline, recalibrated everything, checked for errors, brought it back up. Standard troubleshooting.
Yeah.
The weird contacts came right back. Same characteristics. High altitude, rapid descent, stopping near the water. That recalibration step is pretty crucial because it makes a simple equipment malfunction seem less likely.
Okay, so the radar guys are seeing something persistent and weird. What happens next?
Well, after tracking these things for a few days, the decision is made to investigate visually. Let's send up some fighters and see what's actually out there.
Makes sense. Who do they send?
They launched two F-18F Super Hornets from the Nimitz. The lead pilot was Commander David Fravor, highly experienced guy, squadron commander. His weapons systems officer was in the backseat.
And the second plane?
His wingman was Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich, also with a WSO in the back. So you have 4 highly trained naval aviators heading towards the location the Princeton was vectoring them to.
Right. These aren't rookies. These are top-tier pilots.
Absolutely. Their job is literally to fly high-performance jets and identify things in the air so they get to the designated spot.
And what do they see? Or do they see anything initially?
Initially, nothing on their own radar. But then, Fravor looks down at the ocean, and he sees something unusual on the water. A patch of white water, like something large is submerged just below the surface, churning it up. The ocean was calm otherwise.
Okay. Weird disturbance on the surface.
Yeah, and hovering just above this disturbance, maybe 50 feet or so, is an object. And this is where we get the famous Tic Tac description.
Describe it. What did Fravor say it looked like?
He described it as bright white, completely smooth, no sharp edges, oblong shape like a Tic Tac mint. He estimated about 30 to 40 feet long, so roughly the size of their F-18, maybe slightly smaller.
And the key thing?
The key thing was what it didn't have. No wings, no visible engines or nacelles, no exhaust plumes, no rotors, no control surfaces like elevators or ailerons, just this smooth white object hanging there. No windows either, just matte white.
Wow. Just hanging there. What about Dietrich, the wingman? Did she see it too?
Yes. Her account matches Fravor's. She also mentioned seeing that churning water first, which really helped her visually lock onto the object itself. She described it as sort of an anchor point in an otherwise empty blue sky and sea. Without that water disturbance, she thought finding it visually would have been much harder.
Okay, so they both see this wingless white tic-tac hovering over disturbed water. What does it do?
Well, Fravor decides to get a closer look. He starts a descent towards it. As he does, the object seems to react. It starts to mirror his movement, but erratically. It kind of ascends towards him.
Okay.
Fravor then decides to cut across its path, sort of headed off. And as he does this maneuver, the object does something completely unexpected.
What?
It accelerates instantaneously at a speed he described as like nothing he'd ever seen or experienced. Just zipped away, out of sight, in literally a second or two. No sonic boom, no visible propulsion flash, just gone.
Gone. Vanished.
Vanished. Fravor's words were something like, "It accelerated like nothing I've ever seen." His WSO confirmed this rapid departure. Even their advanced radar had trouble locking onto it because it moved so erratically, but it did register something moving incredibly fast.
And Dietrich. She saw this acceleration too.
Her description focused more on the physics-defying aspect. She emphasized how it moved in ways that just didn't follow the rules of aerodynamics they'd spent years learning. Abrupt changes in speed, altitude, direction, without seeming to be affected by inertia or g-forces. No banking into turns, just instant changes. Completely nonsensical from a pilot's perspective.
You can only imagine the radio chatter.
Oh, yeah. Dietrich mentioned the excitement, the disbelief, both between the jets and with the controllers back on the Princeton. Did you see that kind of thing? The air traffic controller who first saw the radar blips was apparently pretty stunned, too.
So, object disappears. Is that the end of it for that day?
Not quite. Almost immediately after it vanished from Fravor's sight, the controllers on the Princeton picked it up again on radar. 60 miles away, at their designated CAP point, the rendezvous location they were supposed to go to after the intercept.
60 miles.
In how long?
Seconds. Maybe a minute at most after it disappeared visually. To cover 60 miles, that quickly requires speeds far, far beyond any known aircraft. Mach numbers way up there.
That's unbelievable.
And there's more. Later that same day, a different F-18 crew on a subsequent flight managed to capture infrared video using their ATFLIR pod. That's an advanced targeting camera.
This is the famous video the Pentagon released.
That's the one. Released in 2017 along with 2 other videos. It shows a glowing sort of oval or Tic Tac shaped object moving rapidly against the sky, making some unusual maneuvers, rotating even. The audio captures the pilots expressing confusion and excitement.
So multiple sightings, radar confirmation, and video evidence, all from credible military sources. What was the official response back then? Was there a big investigation? That's another strange part of the story. According to Fravor and others involved, there wasn't really a formal, in-depth investigation immediately afterwards. People were debriefed, sure, but it seems like there wasn't a major effort to figure out what they had encountered. Fravor himself has expressed surprise about this lack of follow-up, given what they saw.
Okay, that's a pretty detailed rundown of the events. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. The combination of factors makes it stand out.
Right. So let's transition now into breaking down the perspectives. First, the side that suggests this was something truly extraordinary advanced technology, maybe not ours, maybe not even human. What's the core of that argument?
The main point is the performance characteristics. The instantaneous acceleration, the lack of any visible propulsion, the extreme speeds implied by the radar tracks, the ability to hover and then shoot off, the apparent transmedium travel between air and maybe near water.
Transmedium meaning it operates both in the air and potentially under the sea, based on that disturbed water.
Potentially, yeah. That's an inference some make. But the main thing is that these capabilities, as reported by highly trained observers like Fravor and Dietrich and backed by sensor data, seem to completely outclass any publicly known aircraft or drone technology, either from the U.S. or any other nation in 2004.
So known physics and engineering just don't explain it.
According to this perspective, no. Things like inertial dampening would almost be required to make those kinds of instant direction changes without g-forces destroying the craft, or at least being visible in its flight path. And the energy source required for that kind of acceleration without an obvious engine or exhaust is, well, unknown to public science.
What about the idea it was secret U.S. tech, a black project?
That's often suggested, but the counter-arguments here are, firstly, why test such a revolutionary piece of tech against your own carrier group, potentially endangering your own pilots without briefing them? That seems operationally risky and unusual.
Good point.
And secondly, if it was U.S. tech, it represents a technological leap so vast that it's hard to believe it hasn't surfaced in other ways or contexts in the nearly 2 decades since. And if it was a foreign adversary, well, that's even more alarming. Possessing that kind of technology in 2004 would mean they were light years ahead, and revealing it like that seems strategically odd.
Plus, you have the multiple witnesses and sensors. It wasn't just one person's story.
Exactly. Multiple pilots, multiple WSOs, radar operators on the Princeton, the radar systems themselves, the infrared camera system later, all providing converging pieces of data pointing to a real physical object behaving in extraordinary ways.
And the government eventually acknowledging these UAP events, including Nimitz, kind of adds weight, doesn't it? Even if they just say unexplained.
It does lend a certain credibility. By officially releasing the videos and acknowledging they don't have conventional explanations, it signals that something significant happened that deserves serious attention, even if they aren't saying what it was.
Okay, that lays out the advanced non-human tech perspective pretty well. Now let's put on the skeptic's hat. What are the main arguments from the science-based, more conventional explanations?
The skeptical approach really focuses on looking for potential errors or misinterpretations in the data and the observations. Could there be mundane explanations that fit the facts, even if they aren't immediately obvious?
So starting with the radar.
Right. Even with advanced radar like the SPY-1 on the Princeton, there's always potential for anomalies. Unusual atmospheric conditions like ducting can sometimes cause strange radar returns. Electronic warfare jamming or spoofing could potentially create false tracks, although doing so that effectively against a modern carrier group systems would be quite sophisticated.
But they recalibrated the system, didn't they?
They did, which makes a simple persistent glitch less likely, but perhaps not entirely impossible depending on the nature of the interference, if there was any. Some skeptics suggest potential issues with how different sensor systems integrate data sensor fusion failures, leading to misinterpreted tracks.
Okay, what about the visual sightings and the Fravor-Dietrich encounter?
Here, the arguments often involve the fallibility of human perception, especially in unusual or stressful situations. Judging size, distance, and speed accurately over open water with few reference points is notoriously difficult, even for trained pilots. Could the object have been smaller and closer than estimated, making its movements seem faster or more abrupt?
And the Tic Tac shapes, the lack of wings.
Visual perception can be tricky. Glare, atmospheric haze, distance. Could these have obscured features or made the shape appear simpler than it was? Could it have been, say, a distant conventional aircraft seen under unusual conditions, or perhaps even something like a weather balloon or debris caught in strange lighting? Although fitting a balloon to the reported dynamics is difficult.
What about the ATF-LIR video, the infrared footage? That seems pretty concrete.
That video has been analyzed extensively. Skeptics like Mick West have argued that some of the apparently strange movements seen in the video could be artifacts of the camera system itself, how the auto tracker works, parallax effects between the object, the camera, and the background, and the gimbal mechanism rotating. They suggest the object might not be moving as erratically or as fast as it appears in that specific footage. It might be a distant plane, and the rotation is actually the camera optics adjusting.
So camera limitations and potential illusions.
Exactly. The infrared shows a heat signature, but it doesn't necessarily tell you definitively what the object is or precisely how it's moving relative to the Earth without careful analysis of the camera's own movement and settings.
And the black project idea comes back here too, presumably.
Yes. From the skeptical side, the possibility of undisclosed U.S. technology remains a strong contender. Perhaps an advanced drone, some kind of hypersonic test vehicle, or electronic warfare tech designed to fool radar systems in novel ways. The extreme compartmentalization of these projects could explain why frontline pilots like Fravor weren't aware of them.
So it could be ours, just super secret.
That's one of the leading skeptical hypotheses. It avoids invoking unknown physics or extraterrestrials while still acknowledging that something unusual, likely technological, was probably present.
And finally, the core skeptical reminder. Unidentified doesn't automatically mean alien.
Precisely. It just means unidentified based on the current data. It could be any number of things: sensor artifacts, misperceptions, natural phenomena, secret human tech, or something else entirely. Jumping to an extraordinary conclusion requires extraordinary evidence, and skeptics argue we might not be there yet, despite the compelling witness testimony.
Right, so we have these two quite different ways of interpreting the same set of events. Despite the disagreements, are there any points where both sides actually kind of meet in the middle? Any common ground?
Yeah, there are a few key points of agreement, I think. First, pretty much everyone agrees that something unusual was genuinely observed by credible witnesses and detected by sophisticated military sensors. This wasn't just a vague light in the sky reported by an untrained person. We have multiple Navy pilots, radar operators, radar data, IR video.
So the event itself isn't generally disputed, just the nature of what caused it.
Correct. Second, there's general agreement that the capabilities as reported by the witnesses, particularly Fravor and Dietrich regarding the extreme acceleration and maneuvering, are very difficult, if not impossible, to explain with currently publicly known technology or conventional aerodynamics. Even skeptics proposing mundane explanations often have to acknowledge that the reported behavior is anomalous.
They might question the accuracy of the report, but they agree the report itself describes something extraordinary.
Exactly. And third, everyone agrees the incident is, to this day, officially classified by the U.S. government as unexplained or part of the broader UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena category. There is no official, definitive, mundane explanation that has been widely accepted and has closed the case.
So common ground. Something real happened, it seemed to perform beyond known public tech, and it remains officially unexplained.
That sums it up pretty well. The debate really centers on interpreting those agreed-upon facts.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered the timeline, the eyewitness accounts, the sensor data, and laid out the main arguments for both advanced tech and more skeptical explanations. It really highlights why the Nimitz incident is such a cornerstone case in the modern UAP discussion.
It absolutely is. The quality of the witnesses, the data involved, the sheer strangeness of the reported kinematics. It forces you to confront the limits of our current understanding one way or another.
It leaves us with more questions than answers, really.
Yeah.
Which is often the case with these phenomena.
That's true. It underscores the need for continued investigation, better data collection, and just keeping an open yet critical mind.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the 2004 Nimitz encounter. It's a complex event with no easy answers, and the debate will likely continue for a long time.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating case study.
We definitely encourage all of you listening to look into it further, check out the different analyses, and form your own informed opinions. There's a lot of information out there.
Definitely worth exploring.
Thanks again for tuning in to Beyond the Known. If you enjoyed this discussion and want to hear more explorations into these kinds of mysteries, please do like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out. We'll see you next time.